My name is David Nixon, and I'm the interim town administrator while Ryan is away serving overseas. He's doing well. I emailed him today and we had a little chat, so he's fine. He sends his well wishes to everybody. The candidates have received a letter from the Senior Center inviting them to this meeting tonight. The candidates were asked to give a brief introduction and state the position that they're seeking, explain why they're running for office, outline the goals that they will achieve if they're elected, describe any experience that they bring to the position, remain positive. Incumbent for the Select Board, Jeff Williams, if you want to come up and introduce yourself.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeff Williams. I'm presently the Vice Chairman of the Select Board, and I am seeking re-election. 20 years ago, my wife and we built a home here in Hubbardston. Our 15-year-old son was born here, so we care about Hubbardston. It's been one of the great honors of my life to have served as your selectman these past 8 years, and with your continued support, I hope to be able to continue to serve the town of Hubbardston. When I first ran for the office, and subsequently each time I stood for re-election, I told you that I was a senior citizen and a retired educator. 35 years at Gardner High School, as well as teaching at Mount Wachusett Community College. I indicated that I would be a voice for the senior citizens, as well as a strong proponent for the education of the children of Hubbardston. I can honestly state that I have kept my promises that I made to the town over and over these past 8 years. I still strongly believe that the seniors deserve a place at the table, and I would very much like to continue in that capacity as their voice, as well as in many other areas we as a select board deal with throughout the year. Some of the goals that I see ahead: to continue to be the voice for the seniors, to support getting the very best educational experiences for our children. My own son has gone through the elementary and middle schools of Quabbin Regional School District. I'm very supportive of the education, but, and I emphasize, but I'm also very realistic in what the town of Hubbardston can afford. 60% of the town's budget goes to the school department. We need to hold the Quabbin School District and school committee to more realistic figures when they tell us what they want Hubbardston to contribute to the regional 5-town budget. And over the years that I have served, we, the board, have strongly held our ground as to exactly what we could and could not afford. We have and do say no when the figure is beyond what we feel the town can afford. They have in turn come back with figures that we determine if we can accept or not. Another area I'm strongly interested in is our infrastructure. Ever since I came on the board, our buildings have been a major problem. They're not getting any younger, and they need repair and in some cases replacing. It's a problem that's not going to go away, and we as a board, along with the town administrators, are constantly looking for ways in which we might address the problems, always being aware to keep the cost to the town as low as possible. I have worked on committees to address our building situation ever since I started as a selectman, as long as I've been on the board, and I would like very much to continue trying to come up with solutions for that particular problem. We are also making progress in road repair. Roads in this town, when I first came to the town and first got on the board, the roads had been terribly neglected. Consequently, and I know it's frustrating to the people of the town, we can't repair them all overnight. It took a long time for them to get into this situation that they're in, and equally long it will take chipping away at them, trying to bring them up to snuff, so to speak. But this is a plan, and this is a goal that I would still continue to like to work. We have been very lucky with our DPW Director, Travis. He's been very creative, looking for funds and grants along with our town administrators. Something I've also felt strongly that Hubbardston needed: better roads. Another key word, what Hubbardston needs is revenue. searching, hoping, and always trying to find sources of income for the town. Our major source of revenue continues to be property taxes. Our annual budgets, if you will, FY21 and FY22, is between $9.3 and $9.6 million, while our revenue from property taxes for the same period is between $7.2 and $7.4 million. With 60% of our budget going to the schools, it doesn't leave much for running of the town, roughly $2 million for everything else that we have to do for the town. We need help. We need new businesses to come to town. We need to make Hubbardston a place that people want to come to. My experience is on the job. I've been, as I said, for 8 years serving on the select board and also serving as vice chairman. This has certainly given me an education and a ton of experience on what is happening and what needs to be happening in Hubbardston. In the future, I'm looking forward to improving the roads again. We have town center revitalization coming up as of next year, the town center. Communications tower, which has been a thorn in our sides for many, many years, but it really is going to happen, and it should begin sometime this summer, so we've been told. And also, down the road, we still need to address the problems we have with our buildings. So I'm thinking in terms of a safety building complex. All these projects I have worked on and would like to continue working to see them come to fruition. So I'm asking for your support and your vote, and I promise to continue working as hard as ever for the well-being of the town of Hubbardston. I'd like to thank Claudia and the Council on the Aging for having candidates night. We weren't able to do this last year. That's one of the things that we can say is positive. We must be coming out of this because here we are sitting facing each other. All I've been doing in terms of town government is we've been sitting Zooming with each other. So it's nice to be able to talk to people. Above all, I would encourage, please, everyone, vote. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
Yes, actually. I'm your former constable, and I ran the recycling center, which now is closed for lack of staff. On 11/3, I served as your constable at the elections. And I had to address 5 individuals and ask them to remove political gear. One of them, hours later, after I'd gone home, falsely accused me of assaulting her, which is ridiculous. So, I asked for benefit of town council. I was denied town council, which is probably illegal. So, I lawyered up. By the way, I was told, oh, you don't need a lawyer. But I've heard that before. So, lawyer says, this is a slap suit. I'll have it kicked out at the show cause hearing. And he did. I was exonerated. The charges were found without merit. That was early January, February 1st. There's a Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm getting to it, but there's background. And I'm getting to it soon. And the thing is that the Select Board ignored the fact that I was exonerated and seemed to think that I'd done something anyway, because I had offered a woman this coat, and she took it. She came in wearing a shirt with something she shouldn't be wearing, and I offered her my coat. The clerk magistrate said offering a person a coat does not come to the standards of assault in the state of Massachusetts. So, admittedly, this annoyed me, and I stated that if a woman comes in with the name of a liar written across her face, she's probably going to lie. And filing false charges in court for political reasons is lying. So then I was told I was too partisan to continue as constable. My question is, this was betrayal. And my question is, that you can retract this. You can make it right. Okay? I will return me to my appointment as constable, pay my $500 minimal lawyer's fees, as the law requires, because I was on duty, and then I will happily rescind my resignation at recycling.
All right, so I don't hear a question.
The question is, I can't trust you now. Can I trust you in the future?
First of all, and this is all I can say about it, one of the votes that was made to not have you lose your position, I made.
And I saw your body language, and I believe you.
And it will stop there because this issue was handled in executive session, and I can't be at liberty to discuss those things in a public forum with all due respects. I'm sorry.
If you have nothing to be ashamed of, release the transcript.
Councilor Steiger, 65 Hillville Road. We've gone through a very challenging year with COVID. What do you see are the biggest post-COVID challenges for a town such as Hubbardston?
Well, I don't think it's, in this case, I don't think there's much difference between Hubbardston or the larger communities in the sense of getting back to normal.
Sure.
Getting the kids back in school full-time. Full-time. It has been an awful year. I've experienced this myself with my own son and his education and so forth. Getting ourselves back on an even keel. Fortunately, we know we are going to be receiving some funds. Approximately $1.5 million will be coming back to the town to help alleviate some of the problems that the businesses and individuals have had in the town, etc. That's what the money can be used for. This comes from the government. And we're anticipating, because we were just talking about this the other night, I believe, we're anticipating roughly this summer seeing around $750,000 of that coming. So I guess the big thing is what I call try to get back to normal, whatever that might be, but this is a start.
So we're going to go in alphabetical order, which means Heather Monroe is up next.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us tonight. My name is Heather Monroe and I'm running for a seat on the select board. My husband and I moved to town about 3 years ago. We were drawn to the beauty of the area along with the ruralness. We both spent some time of our lives, myself more than him, in well-developed areas of the Commonwealth, and were attracted to a community where we could appreciate the outdoors and all there was to offer. When I'm not working, I can be found taking advantage of our beautiful area. I enjoy fishing, mountain biking, kayaking, hiking, and skiing. I've been in public service for just under 10 years, working for 5 different municipalities all over the Commonwealth, from large cities to small rural communities. The majority of my experience has been in the role of town administrator for 3 different small rural communities. The most recent of which was serving as the interim town administrator in the town of Barry last year. During that time, I was able to work closely with Ryan, Hubbardston's town administrator, to collaborate and unite on regional dispatch and the regional school system. I've been heavily involved with the town and school financial relationships in each of the rural communities where I served. I believe there's a delicate balance between a strong school district and education system and a municipality's ability to pay, and then in order to balance the interests, it requires a strong involvement of the select board, finance committee, town administrators, along with the other municipalities' teams as well. Since July of 2020, I have had the pleasure to serve as the Director of Senior Services in the town of Wellesley at their Council on Aging. It's been an excellent opportunity to serve the older adults in the community and to find ways to navigate technology, distance, and isolation. I particularly enjoy working with my team to bring new programs to engage our older adults while finding creative ways to address the many needs of our aging population. For my entire professional career, my life has been dedicated to service in the public sector. I believe in citizen engagement and community activism. And looking through the warrant and annual town report for 2020, I noticed that we have many key positions in town, Board of Health, Housing, and Finance, that continue to run with less than full boards. While this is something that is not at all uncommon in rural communities, I think it speaks to an opportunity for more outreach to our citizens and a need for creative ways to get newer and younger residents of the town informed and engaged in town government. To conclude, I'm a passionate resident of Hubbardston who's eager to share my knowledge, support the town administrator, the municipal employees, officials alike, with the business of running the town. My name is Heather Monroe, and I'm running for the select board.
in order to retain more town employees, will you act on the fact that if someone is given a specious lawsuit and the town doesn't back them up, who would want to work for the town? Who?
So I think it's always very important to work closely with the employees, but also work very closely within the laws and the confines of the state of Massachusetts. In addition to my background, I actually bring the training as an attorney to what I've been doing in my municipal practice. But generally speaking, anything you do in a municipality, you're working very closely with your town administrator and your attorneys to make sure that you're doing everything correct. And with working on retaining employees, I think the town's already worked towards that direction. I know Ryan had done a study of other pay and other benefits of other communities to make sure we're on par with what's around us, because that's one of the ways. It's always really hard to retain municipal employees and to find municipal employees for small rural communities, especially ones that are so far off of the Route 2s. You don't often have people who are within the town itself who have all the skills to run the positions of treasurer, accountant, and so forth. And you often have to pull from people outside the community. But in the small communities, even one town away could be 30 or 40 minutes of a commute. So it's very hard and very challenging to find those pieces. And working with, Ryan as the town administrator and David as the interim, they work very closely with an organization called Small Town Administrators Massachusetts, STAM. It's a subset of the Mass Municipal Association, who's also working always to look at these issues. A few years ago, they did a rural community study to actually look at certain things that were problematic and thematic in all the rural communities. So it'll be interesting over time to see if there's more things that develop in more systematic processes or ideas that come out of the state for guidance with the communities on what to do with that.
I'm encouraged at the fact that you have a very broad background in municipal government and you've worked in towns and so forth. I'd like to focus, though, first on I understood you're Director of Senior Services at this point in time.
Yes.
In the town of Hubbardston. Would you have some examples of actions, events, ideas that are potentially directly transferable to the community that we have here? Things that you have done in Wellesley, the things that you have done with the community, specifically the senior community, that you feel can be transferred to a town such as ours? Obviously different scale, but nonetheless applicable.
Sure. So one of the things we've been focusing a lot on in Wellesley's Council on Aging is trying to find different ways to reach our audience. Because we serve the population over the age of 60, that means I have some patrons I serve who are 60, and some are the oldest patron or the oldest registered voter in Massachusetts lives in Wellesley. She's 111. She just went up a year. So we have a very broad range of those 50 years that we're constantly trying to serve, and it's very hard to get the word out to folks. Some people are still in their 60s and 70s and they're still working. They don't have time during the day to come to the Council on Aging. They don't have time to sit there and read the newsletter that comes every 2 months. They need information and they receive information differently. So what we've started doing is putting information on different platforms. We do it in a newsletter. We do it in a weekly newspaper article. We do it on Facebook. We do it in email news blasts. I noticed in looking at our town, I finally subscribed to the news blast on Civic Plus on the town website, but it's interesting, it's still limited as to what information I can get. I did not see a Council on Aging button on it. I saw information I could get for the agendas of the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and I think the Planning Board, maybe Conservation, but there wasn't one out there for open space. There wasn't one out there for the other housing and so forth, other things that some people might be interested in or may just not have that information. One of the things I talked about a little bit earlier was really trying to engage the community and the public and get people more excited about town government, get them involved. When people move to town, they don't always realize they may not be from a small town. They don't know what a town meeting is. They don't know that they have an opportunity as a registered voter to show up and actually have influence and make a difference and be able to speak and potentially change the outcome of something, change the outcome of the budget, change the outcome of an article, or just speak if they're concerned or have questions. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm a proponent for, is making sure that we find different ways to communicate. So it would be looking at what ways do we currently communicate. We broadcast our meetings like the Select Board on cable access. and you're able to see it on YouTube. I don't have cable, so I have to wait 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, to be able to see what happened at the select board meeting 4 days ago. I couldn't watch it live on, I haven't figured out how to watch it live on the YouTube station. I don't think it's currently streaming. And I have to wait until it comes out to be able to see what happens. So it's about getting that information up and running and seeing, okay, who's our audience and how are they receiving their information? If not everyone in town has internet, if not everyone in town has cable, then that's not the best way to disseminate the information. We need to find other ways.
Thank you.
I'm a volunteer here at the senior center, and I respectfully dispute some of the things that you said about communication. Because the senior center, we do have a newsletter. It is sent to the Barry Gazette. It is blasted through email. We've been working on a project since August. And we've been getting people's email addresses and things like that. If we have them, they are getting the newsletter. We send emails out. We do post, I haven't done June's yet, but we do post on the town's website under the Council of Aging, the monthly newsletter. And I agree with you that it's difficult because it's almost like if you're older than, we'll just say 75. The chance of you having a computer and internet, maybe not. There's some people who are 80 that are great, but there are others who they're not interested. And communication is important, and we are doing our best. Yeah, so.
No, I think that's all good points, and I think I was talking more broadly about the town as a whole and all of the different avenues, not just specifically the COA, but that's fantastic that you guys are reaching in those ways.
Well, I think it's really neat that you guys are in here, and this is our senior center. This is it. And I'm hopeful when a young person such as yourself is seeing this, you're saying, you need more space than this. And what are we going to do about it?
The last candidate for the select board is Mr. Peter Walker.
My name is Peter Walker, and I am seeking a position on the select board for our town of Hubbardston. I am running for the select board because of my strong work ethic and my attention to detail, which I feel will benefit the residents of Hubbardston. I retired in 2016 and moved here with my lovely wife Dina in 2018. Now that I'm retired, I know what it's like to be on a fixed income, and I have not received a cost of living adjustment in 4 years. Meanwhile, taxes go up year after year in Hubbardston. In 2019, I wanted to become more involved with the town, so I joined the Cultural Council and the Economic Development Committee, which has really opened my eyes to the needs of the community and my desire to become even more involved. My goals, if elected as a member of the Select Board, include achieving fiscal responsibility and improving the dialogue with the taxpayers. My experience. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran serving from 79 to 83, and I was deployed to the Mediterranean Sea to be part of the multinational peacekeeping force in Beirut, Lebanon. I retired from the Massachusetts Department of Correction in 2016 after serving the Commonwealth for 20 years, 16 of which were at the maximum security prison, Sousa Baronello Correctional Center in Shirley, Mass. I achieved the rank of captain, and I was the 3 to 11 shift commander with the responsibility of 150 staff members and 1,000 inmates. 15 of those years, I was a union steward and became well-versed in contract negotiations and solving conflict between management and staff. I feel that my background will be an asset to the Select Board and the town. I am a firm believer in honesty, transparency, and effective communication. Please vote for me, and thank you for your time.
Semper Fi, I'm a vet myself.
Very good.
If I support you and encourage others to support you,
Okay.
will you right the wrong that was done me? I served faithfully.
All I can say is I don't know much about your situation, but I'd be more than happy to look into it if elected.
I will show you every document.
Okay, be more than happy to.
You mentioned fiscal responsibility.
Yes.
Specifically, you said you would like to achieve fiscal responsibility. That's what I thought I heard from you.
Yes,
Do you have any specific examples?
I knew that. I knew this was coming. So,
Well,
yes,
and obviously, it's a
yes.
valid question.
Well,
May I finish my question?
yes, sir.
Thank you. Do you have any specific examples of the types of fiscal issues that you see the town having and how you would potentially propose on achieving the fiscal responsibility?
Sure. So one of my issues is we've been in a pandemic for a year and a half, and everybody's budget's tight, right? Everybody, the homeowner, the state, the Commonwealth, everybody's tight. And when I saw the contract raises that were given out, I was shocked. I was a union employee for many years, and when things get tight, you didn't get the standard 3%. Okay? So, from what I saw, most people got 3%, 2%, 2% in their next contract. And to me, personally, I think that's a little extreme for the time that we're in. I understand people need a raise, and I do agree with raises, but I think it should have been a little smaller that was handed out. And that falls on the administrator because he negotiates the contracts. And one other item is our town administrator negotiates the contracts with the unionized personnel and whoever else may be on the contract. Now his raise is based off of what he gives for contract raises, and I think that's a conflict of interest. Those are my two biggest issues with fiscal responsibility.
We have a question from
Thank you.
the candidate.
Tom Robinson. Could you just explain that last statement you made? The town administrator's raise is based on...
From what I read
raises?
on the town website, in his contract raise, his pay raise is based off of what he gives the other people in town.
You mean to hire the other people to hire his?
Yes, sir. That's what I've read. And to me, that's a conflict of interest.
Now on to the planning board. We have an incumbent, Mr. Christopher Monroe.
It's also nice to be a place with people again. That's a pleasant change. But hello, everybody. As you heard, my name is Christopher Monroe, and I am currently serving Hubbardston on the planning board. I'm here tonight because I am on the ballot to move from an appointed position to a regular elected 5-year term. At the end of the last year, I reached out to the town and I asked, hey, what can I do to help? How can I get involved? How can I do more and give back? And we had a brief conversation about my experience and my background as an attorney and the work I've done leading nonprofit boards, and I was immediately matched up with the planning board. Then after that, I was appointed, and I've been on since December of last year. And since that time, we've seen some big attention-grabbing issues come up. But tonight I want to talk about some of the ones that I think are getting lost and some of the ones that I think are more important. And a lot of those issues are related to COVID. And there's been a lot in the news, and there's been a lot that people have disagreed about. But there's one thing that the numbers show. And the numbers show that in March 2020, the median home price in Hubbardston was $293,000. And now the numbers show that as of April 30th, 2021, that price is now $342. Now, to save everybody the math, that's an increase of 17% in 1 year. So what happened? What happened is a historical sea change. Previously, and this information I got off of our town housing report, 80% of the workers in town drove either south to Worcester, over to Gardner, or out to Route 495. COVID's changed all that, and it's changed all of that permanently. For example, the governor has announced that up to half of the state workforce is now going to work remotely. According to a McKinsey report, 20 to 25% of office workers are going to remain working from home 3 to 5 days per week. That means the commuting bubble that you can draw on the map around Hubbardston just got huge. It's now a reasonable commute to go to to go to Cambridge 2 days a week. It's a reasonable commute to go to Boston. And what that's causing is a redistribution of people and a mass migration to rural communities. Now, we're just in the beginning of that now because of what we have for available housing stock. But why does this matter? Why am I even talking about this? And it's because we have two things coming up where this information matters. So the last time we saw a rise like this in Hubbardston was in the 90s and the early 2000s, according to our housing planning report. And that was driven by the economic growth around Route 2 and Route 495. And in that time, housing prices only rose 54% over a 20-year period. We're talking about a 17% rise in a little more than 1 year right now. And that growth isn't slowing down. If you look at the curve, that thing goes straight up like a hockey stick. So we have two major policy issues that are in front of the planning board and in front of the town that we need to get the community involved in. The first one is the rate of development bylaw. And that's kind of lost in the noise when you look at the warrant, because you look at the warrant and it's like, what is this? They want to change two words? Well, those two words mean a lot. They extend our rate of development bylaw and give us a year to get everybody together to sit down and work as a community and figure out what we want to look like as a community, instead of just having a board go out and be like, oh, open the doors to development, or else close the doors to development. That shouldn't be a board question. That should be a community question that we all work on. The other thing is we're currently working on our master plan, and we need to come together as a community on that. Everybody here, everybody who shows up to the town meeting is going to get a little card, and that card is going to tell you to go in and fill out the survey for the master plan. Please do that. We need to work together on this. I believe as a board, we need to engage the public and we need to ask questions, and we all need to talk about stuff like this. Because we need to figure out how to balance controlling the growth rate with the need to manage the tax base. We also need to find ways to encourage development that helps out seniors and helps out our families and doesn't just print out McMansions. We need zoning and we need planning that does both of those things. I'm really excited about the opportunity to work on these issues. And I don't like making promises, but I'm going to tell you some things that I am going to do on the planning board going forward, and that I try to do now. I commit to bringing all the skill and experience of an attorney. I commit to showing up and being prepared. I commit to always looking what a policy or decision means to us as the taxpayers. I also commit to acting professionally and treating everybody with respect. And I commit to always asking, well, where is this going to lead us in the long run? So, in closing, thank you for having me here. And thank you. I've actually had an opportunity to meet a lot of you over the last month or so while this election's been starting. And I really appreciate that. And thank you for being involved in the future. So please show up and please vote for me on the 8th. And we'll move this forward together.
The rate of development bylaw that you mentioned has served this town very, very well for quite a long time. It regulates the number of building permits and how they're applied and how their subsequent developments take place. You've been on this planning board now for almost a year, I guess.
A little bit less, but
Yeah.
yes.
Do you think a one-year renewal of that law is adequate, or would you support a from the floor five-year extension of that law? After all, the planning board has a 5-year cycle kind of built in.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult to get anything done in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Would you support a 5-year renewal?
I would certainly consider it, because my reasoning for supporting the 1 year is that we need more time to talk about this, and we need more time to work on it. And I am not opposed to the rate of growth limitation. I think it's actually a very powerful tool for the town, and especially given the budgetary constraints we have with the school system, it protects us. Because if we're limited at 28 houses coming in, that means we're not going to suddenly get hundreds of kids into the school system in a single year. And that's important for us because we need to absorb change a little bit at a time. And that's one of the things we need to plan for. So to go back to your point, I certainly would consider supporting it. I would like a little time to think about that in terms of whether or not it is pragmatic to do it during a year, but I would certainly entertain the motion.
If that doesn't pass, what's the fallback position? What is in place what would happen?
If that doesn't pass, there will be no restriction on the number of permits that can be issued in a single
So
year.
it would be wide open?
Sky's the limit.
I mean, I understand we're all private property owners and we could sell, I understand all that, but does that sound like a good idea?
Oh, it's not. I really
know,
hope
I mean-
everybody shows up and votes for it
Right,
so we can figure this out as a
So
town.
at least 1 year sounds.
Yes.
And possibly something like 2 or 3, maybe 5 is too much, but wow, I mean, that's, the fallback position sounds scary.
Yeah, this is
That's
something
very
that needs to be debated publicly.
Yeah.
And we actually had a hearing on this, and nobody from the public showed up. So it was an appropriately posted agenda, and my comments for that meeting were, wow, I really don't feel comfortable doing something with this without getting feedback from the public. This isn't our place. This is the town's place to do this. And that's why at the meeting we decided, well, we need to do something to make time, to get people aware of this issue. And if the majority of the voters in the town, or rather, if somebody makes a motion, well, we don't need 1 year, we need 5 years because it takes time to get stuff done in a small town. If that comes up and that's the will of the public, I completely support it because it's not about what I want, it's not about my agenda. I want to comply with the law. I want to make sure we have reasonable growth. I want to make sure this town doesn't turn into something that it's currently not. I don't want to limit all development. I don't want there to be hundreds of houses per year. I think one thing that's important to note is that period during the 90s and into the early 2000s, half of the houses that are currently standing in Hubbardston were built. Half of them. In what was a little bit less than a 20-year period. And we heard from people tonight who all came to this town during that period. So there's a capacity for this town to change a lot in the coming years if we're not careful.
Okay, so we built our house in the 90s, and I will tell you that's one of the issues that we had is one of the beautiful things that you appreciate now is the length of time that it took to build the house, getting your permits and the okays and all of that. And I don't think we've made any changes to that kind of stuff. So I understand what you're saying about, it's very concerning as someone who is retired and is on a fixed income, that I think our taxes are gonna be going up. If the value of the houses have increased that much, what is it gonna do to everybody else's house? So does that mean everybody's taxes are gonna be going up to 17% because our houses have increased 17%? Well, not, I guess the point my major point is, to get a house built in Hubbardston takes time. It doesn't happen. And I feel pretty comfortable with what's on the books right now. Because of course, once you move into Hubbardston and you see how beautiful everything is, you want to close the doors. You know, I'm here, okay, nobody else can come in.
Well, and that I think is kind of the challenge of our community. So the house that I live in, like the moment that I walked into was like, this is the place where I want to be for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I want to raise a family. It's like being in summer camp every day of the year. Like, there's loons that wake me up in the morning, and not like the ones yelling on the street for change, like the actual animals. Like it's incredible. And yeah, when you get here, you want everybody who gets here has a natural tendency to want to keep that special thing, to want to keep it exactly as it is. But we also have to balance that with, well, in order for the people who are here to stay that, we have to think about, well, what's development going to do to the tax rate? What's this rate of growth going to do to the tax rate? And to your question about, well, what's going to happen with the values? There's people in this room who are way better versed at it than me, but there is a legal limitation on the amount that your taxes can increase per year. And there's all kinds of math that goes into that, but even with the real estate value going up, there's still a cap on what your taxes can be, and going over that requires a vote. So That's not going to immediately impact your taxes, but they are going to slowly catch up over time now as the assessed values change.
Ed Blanchard, 23 East on Pond Road. I would just like to say that, we all moved here because we like the rural atmosphere, to be sure, and we always want to protect that moving forward. 40%, over 40% of Hubbardston is owned by the state, DCR land, and that is one of the huge green belt that will never go away. The other thing, if you want to look at development, if you take a look at your records in the assessor's office as to how many house lots are available on the existing frontage that we have in Hubbardston, there are very few. If our development was going to grow at an exponential rate, it would require development of roads and big plots of land being subdivided. And you don't find that very often in Hubbardston. So in terms of the rate of development, since that law was put into effect, I think there's been very few years when we've had over 28 million.
That's very true. We haven't bumped up against it yet, but I do introduce the data point that we're also bumping against different economic times than it existed before, unless you go way back to the 90s or the 2000s. And once you get somebody who's in the position where they're able to throw money at a problem, being able to put in roads and doing those kinds of things, if you can make money investing in the real estate, become more incentivized. And in terms of whether or not we can or should do something about that, goes to the master plan that I spoke about. So we shouldn't work in a vacuum. We should follow some kind of guiding document, some kind of guiding principle. And that all comes from the master plan. Like, we shouldn't walk into the planning board and be like, you know what? Today we should definitely start the process to completely shutting off development for 10 years. Like, no, we shouldn't do that. We should talk to experts. We should talk to the community. We should find out if what we have for frontage is what the town wants, if it's what the people want, if it's what the state guidelines for sustainable development suggest we should have. We should look into all of those things and all make a decision together about it.
We have a question right here.
Well, I was just going to comment that comments were made that this rate of development has been good in Hubbardston. Relatively slow. There's a valve there, and then it's opened and closed a little bit by what we have for laws. And the reason the town is pretty much the way it is because of that law. And if you drop that guard, you'll find large tracts of land developed very, very quickly.
I completely agree with that, and we can look to the east to see examples of that. So if we look at like what happened in Stowe, what happened in Berlin, they had a lot of development on large lots, spread out single-family houses. And if you have a lot of single-family houses, it costs more to have a single-family house than that house contributes in revenue. Mm-hmm. So that needs to be part of an overall plan, because if all you're doing is building houses, you're driving up the need for more and more tax money. And if you go to towns like Stowe, they do a 2.5 override for all kinds of stuff. It's a regular thing that they have every year. People are living in split family ranches and paying more on taxes than we pay out here for large houses on big lots. It's nuts, and we should never get that way.
We have a question right here, 2 questions right there.
2 questions. No, 1 question.
1 question.
Well, first of all, I agree very much with what Tom says, Tom Robinson, in terms of the bylaw crept up on us. And this past year, with the public hearing, not getting any feedback, we had to basically take an alternative action, which is basically to extend it instead of letting it expire. The way I think we, as a planning board, are looking at it is really to use that year productively. And so my question to you is what actions can we now, as a planning board, and we've been extremely busy with the A&Rs, with the marijuana bylaws changes, with all of the changes that are happening here in the center of town, etc. What specific actions do you think we as a planning board ought to take, or need to take, in order to make sure that we have a very solid growth plan and a bylaw that can fit this town, so that a year from now, it can be presented to the townspeople in a manner that it protects and at the same time takes the interests of the town at heart.
Well, I think we took a pretty big step towards that just tonight. So everybody who shows up here or to events like this are the kind of people that show up. They're the people who show up to town meetings. They're the people who come and comment, and I appreciate all of them. So we took the first little step, and that's making even more people aware of what's going on. And even though it looks like a small thing, it's actually a big thing. So the next step after that is for us to keep it on the agenda and for us to do outreach in other ways. Like Facebook has become a pretty big messaging channel. And the thing that works kind of weird from it is the demographics that you get using that are different from the demographics that you get at some of these events. But we need to talk more about it further in advance on the town Facebook page. We need to let people know that it's a big deal and let them know that it's something that they care about. And when people care about it and they know to care about it, we're gonna get some feedback.
You know, and you're young.
Thank you.
You're young, and your wife is young. I assume. Okay. You're young, and it's great, and you have all this energy, and it's stupendous, and it's needed in the town and all of that. However, 1 in 3 people in the town of Hubbardston is over the age of 60. Facebook is not the thing. You can put all you want up on Facebook. You can be on Facebook all day long. People aren't looking. And by the way, I'm Sue Brady, and I live up on Root Road. I like to think about West. So, you know, you can say, oh, we're putting it up. Facebook doesn't do that. Facebook just really and truly, the people you want to reach, I mean, we're the ones that are paying taxes. The majority of taxes. And you need to reach us. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing about the planning board and the changes that you want to make and stuff like that. And you can say, well, why don't you go into the meetings, do the Zoom? It's not good.
I'm never going to say any of those things. I'm never going to say, why aren't you going to the meetings? I'm going to say, why aren't we as government going out and meeting the people where they are? And to your point, yeah, some people are on Facebook, some people aren't.
Yeah.
Some people still read the newspaper. I read the newspaper on the weekends.
Yeah.
You got to go out and meet the people where they are and communicate to them in a way that makes sense to them. Because everybody takes something a little bit different away from a conversation. And I bet if we talk to everybody here tonight about the rate of expansion by law, somebody else is going to have a different takeaway from that. So did I even just effectively communicate it now, having a captive audience and talking about it for an exceptionally long period of time? So it's a challenge.
We have Mr. Peter Chetz.
My name's Peter Jeffs. I moved to Hubbardston in early '94, and I owned a house on Elm Street. I currently live at 11 Main Street, which is the John Quincy Morse house. I have an undergraduate degree from Clark University, and I earned with honors a Master's of Science degree from Simmons College in Boston. Previous employers included places like Boston Public and Worcester Public Libraries, but I also worked in academic libraries and significantly changed and worked at Digital Equipment Corporation for 11 years. While there, I was an information specialist as opposed to a librarian, and I produced the index to the Digital Technical Journal. And later I worked at Sybase, which is a software company, and that expanded my knowledge into relational databases and data management. I'm a life member of the Hubbardston Historical Society and the Fitchburg Historical Society. I also have memberships with Westminster Historical Society and the Rutland Historical Society. I'm the author of the Jeff's Genealogy, as you might expect, and also done significant research into John Murray, who was the man who did pass the papers in the 1762 to create the town of Hubbardston. He was well-to-do man from Rutland who was the representative for all of this area of Massachusetts. I've also presented a detailed program on the Scotch-Irish immigration, and I presented that to the Central Mass Genealogical Society and to the Westminster Historical Society. That one was 5 church, a church burning, and the white potato. That has an awful lot to do with the founding of Rutland, which is now celebrating its 300th anniversary next year. And I've been speaking with the anniversary committee about doing a presentation on John Murray, whose house is still down there and is used as a B&B today. I did serve on the planning board from 2011 to 2014 and was the board's representative to the Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission and also to the town's Community Preservation Committee, among other working with other, including the select board at one time. I saw that Claudia asked us to explain why we're running for office, and I went up to Dave Simmerer's house up on Williamsville Road to ask him if he'd put up a sign, and he looked at me and said, "Are you crazy?" And so that's the reason I'm running for planning board, is that I'm crazy. What goals I would have if I were to be elected, I think the number one goal that I would do is, I'm sure this is a technicality that at least a couple people know here, is that there is an organization out of Boston called the Citizen Planning Training Coalition. I did 2 years of taking classes with them, working on a level 1 certificate. A certificate, if I were to achieve my certificate at level 1, that would give us credits that we could apply to our public officials' liability insurance to reduce the amount of money that the town has to pay in insurance. So just by putting out that kind of effort, we can reduce our costs there. Let's see, what are the other things? Oh, okay, that was that. Yeah, you got the experience. I tried to remain positive. I guess you pretty much know everything. That's it. I relaxed and dealt like, and that is, what you see is what you get.
I don't think you're crazy, but I still would like to understand, why are you running for the planning board? I didn't quite get that.
I think, well, I have experience on the planning board already. I think that the planning board would benefit from experience. The other thing is that I know that most of the members on the planning board, Mr. Monroe, are new to town, and I think being on the planning board, you really need to know the town, and I've been here for 27 years. I know the town. When I worked on the planning board before, Vince Ritchie and I went through all the assessor's records because we were trying to work to get a variance, a pass on the affordable housing, which the West Boylston had just gotten a pass on it because so much of the property, as Ed Blanchard mentions, so much of the property in town is owned by the city. They had the same kind of configuration, and so they were granted a pass on the affordable housing. So we went through every single place, and it took us weeks and examined to see if we could figure out enough places so that we could also apply to petition the state to give us a waiver. So I think my experience speaks for itself, and the fact that I know the town. Not only have I served on the board, but I know the town extremely well, and I think by the number of signs that you saw, I know a lot of people.
So you were on the board from 2000?
11 to 2014. Planning board is that's why Dave said that you must be crazy. Planning board can be an extremely contentious board. Maybe it's changed now, but there were times when we had a lot of battles going on, not necessarily from the board itself, but in dealing with companies that were trying to move into town. The solar arrays, for instance, a lot of contentions when the solar arrays first came in. We had a steep learning curve to find out about them, and we got a lot of pushback from the people who were trying to come in from away the town and to try to push they thought, oh, this is a small town. They don't know what's going on. We'll just railroad them and put up these things anyway. So you had to be a pretty strong personality to get through with that. And maybe it's changed now. I don't know. You apparently serve on the board. You could speak to that better than I could. But I do know that it can be quite difficult to be on the planning board.
Is that how we ended up with marijuana stuff in town?
Their marijuana came that's much more
You were
recent.
saying that the planning board can be very contentious.
I couldn't answer that question because I haven't been on the board. You'd have to ask this gentleman, or this gentleman.
Because I remember at a town meeting, I got up, and you probably remember me, and I said, you wanted to put a tax on marijuana. You want, the town wants to put a 3% tax. And I said, well, are we gonna be growing it? Are we gonna be having is somebody gonna be opening up a store? Are we gonna be selling it? Oh, no, we just wanna put it in place just in case. And the next thing you know, we've got marijuana bonds. And is that the role of the planning board?
I believe those decisions have already been made.
Oh, no kidding, because they're here. I'm asking.
I really I cannot address that because I'm not on the planning board now. You're asking questions that you should be asking this gentleman or this gentleman. I'm just trying to get you to vote for me, that's all. I can't answer those kind of questions.
Do you know when the marijuana bylaw was put in place?
My understanding is that what we first did is we did a moratorium when the law came in. But no, listen, I'm interested in what's going on right now, what's happened in history. Why are you holding me accountable for that or something?
No, I'm just asking because you're asking us whether or not, we should answer those questions. I'm just asking.
I'm saying to this lady.
No, but I understand that. The point I'm trying to make though is that the marijuana bylaw was actually put in place by the preceding member of the planning board. It preceded myself, your opponent candidate. And quite frankly, I think it's very important for us to also understand the history of what the precedence is of this here. And by it having been voted by the town, we right now, as the planning board, are limited to the bylaws. And so my follow-up question to you would be is what would you do as a town planning board member in regards to this particular issue?
I'd have to. You're asking me to blue sky. I don't blue sky. If you present something to me and I have a chance to read it and contemplate it and think it over in my mind, then I could give you an answer to that. But I'm not going to just make something up out of whole cloth.
So you have no position on this here?
I have very few positions at all. Whatever is presented to me as A&R, A&Is, and things like that, I want to look at them, look and make sure that all the things have been followed correctly. Take it step by step. I'm not somebody I'm going to, as this gentleman said, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to look at the things, I want to study it, I want to have time to think about it, and then make a decision. But I'm not going to say that I'm going to do this or do that, because I don't know.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment? Excuse me. If I could make a comment on behalf of the board and to the lady's point. But I think it's very important, not only for you, but that the town can understand this, because I remember the town meeting and so forth. Number one, the town voted yes as a community to have marijuana. That basically opened the doors for a person to come in to try and offer to set up a business, and so they had every right to do that because we as a town voted that way. We said yes, and consequently, for example, the gentleman who's presently going through the process, I can tell you from the board's point of view, with legal, state, federal, he is totally in compliance with everything so far. So that I know there are people, and I think perhaps you too, who weren't in favor of it, but it is here. And number one, it's not going to go away because we did vote yes, and he has every right to do that. On the positive side, there is can be possibly some significant revenue for the town, but it is important that we do remember the town did vote for it.
How about Connie Strittmeyer, if you could come up?
So my name is Connie Strittmatter, and hopefully I will lighten things up a little bit because I'm running for library trustee, which is not nearly as intense as select board or planning.
Oh, just you wait.
I've been a library trustee for 4 years. I filled a 1-year vacancy, and then I am finishing up my 3-year term. And I would like to continue to be a library trustee. I'm a librarian. Thank you. I currently work at Fitchburg State University, and I moved to Hubbardston about 6 years ago. And moving into a small town, like many of the people here on stage, I think we all realized that we wanted to give back to our community. And so having my skills as a librarian, I thought maybe I can help with the public library. Since I've been on the board, I have helped develop our strategic plan. I did that with Josephine Amato and Jane Arata. And when we did that, we were able then to submit it to the MBLC, which is the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. And when we did that, it enabled us to start applying for programming grants, was something we hadn't been able to do for quite a few years because we didn't have a strategic plan on file with them. I am also, I work with Mark Wiggler on the road race committee, so I'm the liaison. So I kind of work to help develop or to raise funds for the library so we can continue to offer programming and books that are hopefully of interest to you. I believe strongly in an informed citizenry, and that I think the library is a place where anybody, regardless of age, can come and continue to learn, continue to enjoy the love of reading, and to be a part of the community. So I will pause.
How would you improve our library?
I think our library is pretty good. I think Chris Herbert has been doing a great job as the interim director. I think she's been leading the book club here at the senior center. When we went through the pandemic, she was very active and still holding children's story time, doing it through Facebook. So I think there's a lot going on good with the library. I think one of the things we are working on as a committee is really looking at some of the accessibility issues in the library, both physical accessibility and then also thinking about the library website and how that is accessible for people who may have visual impairments. So I think that might be one area that I would like to start kind of focusing a little bit more on.
And Mr. Tom Robinson for library trustee, please.
I guess I'm last up. The bases are loaded, and I'm going to try to hit a home run. Thank you very much for creating this event, and a special thanks to the Senior Center and the staff, Claudia, and they always do a great job. I'm running for library trustee, re-election. I'm not certain, but I think it's my 3rd term. That would be about 9 years. It's a very good position. I really enjoy it. We have a tremendous staff. Connie, of course, just spoke. I am not running against her. We are both running unopposed. So you have to vote for both of us. There are 2 open positions, obviously. Chris Barbera is our director. Josephine Amato is our chairman. And Joanna Henning, Morgan Brinker, and Krista Gauguin are the rest of the trustee board of trustees. And they're all great. There's a lot of talent in there on, well, I can read, but I'm not a librarian. These other people bring an awful lot in terms of library content and the whole information. It's not way beyond books. It's internet and whole communications world to your fingertips here at the library. And I'd encourage everyone to go in and make themselves at home. But I fall more into the category of the physical plant. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I'm going to fix the bricks. And just a few years ago, we did a roof, and I really enjoy doing those kind of projects. And that experience and skill combined with the physical plant that needs some physical help makes for a very interesting projects, a very interesting position. So I'd like to point out that on the warrant this year at the town meeting, I'd strongly encourage you to vote for Articles 18 and 19. They have to do with working on both the interior and the exterior of the library. Things like safety lights and things that are necessary to work towards code compliance. And I was very encouraged by the Community Preservation Committee, which sponsored those two articles. Those people are also a committee of volunteers. They carefully consider and approve funding applications, and in this year they did that for the library. And I think they do a great job. They guard those funds pretty carefully, and they very intelligently consider what this town will benefit from by the application of such funds. And so along those same lines, I'd encourage everyone to also vote for Articles 14 and 16, which are two more articles sponsored by the CPA. One is for building materials to go into an affordable housing project in town. I don't think we have too many of them, and I think it's a welcome addition to our community. And number 16 is a application of funds to conserve 245 acres. The project is termed Fieldstone Farm, and I hope you've gotten the various flyers and things that have been left around town. If you haven't, I have a few, and I'd be glad to hand them to you. But that, I'd like to hark back to a minute for the rated development law we talked about. 245 acres of open space preserved, I think, is a real valuable contribution to the community, and those funds are being very well spent. So I'd encourage you all to attend the town meeting, participate in the election, and beyond that, consider volunteering for positions in town that are open. We have many open positions, and there's opportunities to serve. And with that, I think I will stop, and thank you very much for listening. And come to the town meeting, participate in the election, and think about filling one of those positions that are open on the ballot.
You look good in the mustache. A quick comment.
Thank you.
Last year, you came to the CIPC, and you very eloquently brought to the CIPC the need for funding, specifically for work that had to be done on the foundation in the library and the whole building.
Yeah.
Can you give us a quick update on that? In terms of where we stand? Because I think that was a phenomenal presentation you did at that point in time.
Well, I don't know how phenomenal it was, but
Well, we got the funding, right?
yes, but it's
There you
a little hard to make much of a couple of bricks. But the front of the library suffered when the roof was in a bad condition. The gutters were in a bad condition, and the rain overflowed the gutters and came down and soaked one area of the front lawn, and it ate away the masonry part between the bricks, the little, the mortar. And so that area needs work. We got a small fund to do that. And when we brought the structural engineer in to review the whole foundation, he said, well, there's more work to be done. And so the funding this year, we have the leftover funds to do the little bit, but we didn't want to do that unless we were going to really do the serious problem or serious effort. And so we're going to go around the foundation and make sure that we do the whole base. It's an interesting building. The front against the street is buried in dirt. The other three walls are open, so it's relatively easy to get at them and see and inspect and whatnot. But the front we're going to have to dig up, fix up, rebury. That's one major chunk of work. The other chunk of work is inside. There's some storm windows missing, and as I mentioned earlier, safety lights. Like when the power goes out, you're supposed to have battery-operated lights and illuminated exit signs and whatnot, and the building doesn't have them. And I think that's pretty important. And looking forward, not presently funded, but looking forward, there's ADA issues, Americans with Disability Act issues. There's other opportunities to bring the building up to speed. I think it's our number one historic building in town. And it'd be just a shame to not keep it and build it towards better.
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask you, if you don't mind, Tom, just the same question I asked the previous candidate. Obviously, you have strong ideas, and you've been involved with fixing the physical, structural aspect of the building. Are there any other ways that you see that you would undertake in order to improve our line?
Well, I think beyond the ones I mentioned a lot about, the future, the not very distant future, but the future would be aimed at Americans with disability compliance. We've started that a little bit. We're talking about, you know, an elevator or how you do it. We have a lift out in front that is pretty much useless. If I was a person that needed to use that, I would be a little bit
Scared.
disappointed. Disappointed at least, maybe scared. So I think we really have to get that shaped up, and it's going to be a pretty big bite, but I think we can do it. I'm really encouraged by this year by the way the Community Preservation Committee pulled 3 pretty divergent projects, you know, affordable housing, land preservation, and library work together. They're a smart group. They put the money around in different spots. But then these 3 groups pulled together, and you'll find flyers that are talking about all 3 projects. And I hope you read them. I hope you support all 3 projects. It was very encouraging to find the community pull together like that.
Mike Stahl, 5 Lombard Road. You mentioned 2 warrants for the library. Between the 2, which one's the most important?
Both of them.
Not a good enough answer. If you had to pick one, which one would you pick?
The interior one, I'm looking for the number. I believe the 18 is the interior one. That actually brings us not completely toward code compliant, but in the direction of code compliance. I think code compliance probably trumps, wrong word, probably is more important than a foundation issue that we can hold off. But the foundation issue has to be addressed. I would not want to see one pass and the other not pass. We have a little bit of money left over from the allocation you mentioned, and we can get like the emergency part of that done. The other thing that we're looking at is, of course, a brand new Main Street's coming through here. And nothing's going to look very good when you have brand new up against not very brand new. And so we're looking at fixing the front of that building to marry up to the new sidewalks and structure that's going to be very impressive. And in fact, we'd like to marry up with the school and marry up with the town parking lot and the offices and get that whole front done. And put a little face on the town building. You don't know him? He's your husband.
I've been told, and I just wanted to find out the truth of this, that you guys are limited in grants you can apply to fund some of these things because the building houses town offices. Is that the case?
Connie, help.
Can I
So,
speak to that?
to an extent, with MBLC, we can apply for a renovation grant, but it can only be for the library part. It can't be for the town offices. So it can only be the part in which the library is there. In order to do that, though, we still have to be in compliance, have a strategic plan in place with MBLC. So there is a little bit of options now that we can apply for grants, but it can only be for the physical library itself, not the entire building. So I think the foundation, to me, sounds like that would be the overall, it's not just the library, right? That's the whole building with town offices, so that would not be available. And also I would say renovation grants through the MBLC, they come up on a cycle. And I think the last time they did a round of renovation funding was in 2015. They have like 5 or 6 libraries in the queue, and so they haven't done another call for renovation funds like since 2015. So some of these things are more immediate, so I think having town support and town funding helps us kind of get us along the way.
If I'm not mistaken, also some of the ADA stuff is predicated on getting the town offices out of there.
Could I talk on that for a minute? To your point, the library, the Clark Building is a historical building. And when it was left to the town, it had the stipulation that it be used and only used as a library. This addresses also the problems that we are having with many of our buildings. There would be a lot of money available to it if it was simply totally used as a library, as far as grants. And this is one of the frustrating things we've been dealing with over the years when we're trying to approach our building needs, is until we can get, we started with this wanting a senior center because, as I put it 8 years ago, I felt that they were the linchpin to our whole problem, because once we can move the seniors and have something like that, out goes those offices, and now the Clark Building is can get a lot of money. This is what we're dealing against. They're very limited because it's not totally being used as a library, and as long as that's the case, there will be a lot of doors that will be shut to them, but that's how this all came about.
Thank you, Jim.
I'd like to challenge that. If you walk up the front steps of the library, you'll see a plaque on one side that says library, a plaque on the other side that says post office. This building has always been multi-use. In the office, when I first moved here, this building was 4 kindergartens. Or in fact, it wasn't even built, but it was it became 4 kindergartens. The offices were 100% in the bottom of that library. Police station was in the bottom of the library. The place was a little crowded, but we got by. And I think all grants come with some limitations. That doesn't stop you from applying for them. And we'll be able to apply for limited grants. But I think the issue is not old deeds or intentions of Jonas Clark. The issue is the Municipal Library Association, or whatever it is, requires that the building be more of a single use for the library. Yes.
Why are we dealing with electrical code updates in 2021 when emergency lighting's been in the code for many years? Many years, correct?
Yeah.
So why are we dealing with this in 2021? Why are there no lights in there in 2021? If it's been in the electrical code for I don't know how many years.
Welcome to Hubbardston. Well, I think we're dealing with it the way towns deal with things. And when you become a selectman, you will get familiar with the fact that budgets are constrained. And
I understand, but it's code. It is part of
code
federal.
Code doesn't make money.
Federal electrical code to have emergency lighting in a building.
Yep.
So how are you able to even open it as a library without, how long has it been a library? I'm sorry, I don't know my
Since
history.
1873, I think.
Excellent. So, my point is made. Now, as codes are updated, cities and towns are responsible for updating their infrastructure, as in buildings and whatever. And you're telling me it's been probably 25 years, it's probably been in the electrical code.
There's people like this that take part in things.
Yeah.
And in general, the town does the best it can with the constraints and the resources we have. Other priorities stack up, and we make decisions collectively, and we live with our decisions, and we keep moving forward. It's kind of crowbarring a big rock along, we don't run with the rock.
I mean, I understand. But technically, that's a safety fire issue. If there's, if your power goes out and there's a fire in that building, you can't see your way out of the exit, that's a huge liability right there.
Everybody understands the issues. Getting the work done is a little hard. And we're going to do it. Sure. If you vote for the article.
Why in 2021 we're dealing with something that should have been done 25 years ago. If that's the way it works here.
So thank you. Any questions for any of the candidates? Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for your generous applause. Thank you for the thoughtfulness of your questions and the thoughtfulness that you've put into your presentations. Next Tuesday is the town meeting day, and then the following Tuesday is going to be the election day. So come.
Here,
Town meeting in
that meeting here.
That's right.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to know because last year it was somewhere else.
Yeah, it's not outside this year. So thank you very much for your time and attention, and thanks to the candidates for a thoughtful presentation. And I encourage you to do your civic duty and vote for town meeting and town election.